Hello, the subject for this video is we're going to make the witch's hat that you see here, which is perfect for the wall or beside a doorway. It's a little large possibly to hang on your entry door, but it's great for any place that you've got a wall portion or for a party. I've done it here in the chocolate mesh with bronze tone metallic going through it, and then we're going to make one with black so you can see the difference of how it might look and the options that you can come up with yourself. Now the supplies that you need are the cone shape or tree shape work wreath. This is just a metal frame and it's made specifically for the mesh, and we've got multi-functions. Today, of course, we're using it for the top of the hat. You can also use it as a wall Christmas tree. And then to form the brim, you're going to need one work wreath cut into half. Now, it's also going to require 3 rolls of the 21-inch ribbon, and then if you wish, you can use any other ribbon. I've chosen a 4-inch burlap to mix in with that brim and give you a little more detail work. So, the first thing that we've got to do is to make our hat a little more interesting. So, I'm merely going to bend it against the edge of the table, because unless you're just superhuman, you don't want to do it just with your hands only, because Lord only knows what you're going to end up with. Now then, here we've got a nice bend. It's even swirled a little bit this time, which is even better. And so now then, you're not going to use the center pieces, so we're just going to shape out the edge only so that you can easily grab your ties that you need as you're working down the piece, and that part will already be done. Let's see, there we go, there's the top one. I'm going to do the same thing down the other side, and these center ones can just mash in and they'll kind of work as padding. Alright, now then we'll lay our half piece aside for the moment, and we'll start off with our first roll of mesh. Now then, in this case, because the witch's hat can be kind of raggedy and we want the additional texture anyway, we're going to leave this raw edge sticking out, and you're going to start with that very top tie and just leave that puff sticking out there. And then we're just going to pull straight down that side to where the bend is. And we're going to tie that off. Now we're going to have to pull that fairly tight because we don't want the detail work of the top point to get lost. Just like so. And then as we work our way back, and we'll pull up to that top point again one time and tie it off. And then we can start working our way down the hat. Now this piece, like the pumpkin wall piece, where you're not doing the loops all the time, you're pulling back and forth, is a more sculptural piece. This is a little more advanced than the pumpkin or the spider or even the sunflower, merely because you're creating more of a sculpture, and it's a little more advanced shape than just the round circle that you're dealing with for most of the pieces. And so you just want to play it by feel, step back and look at it if you need to. Okay, see, this is developing the curve around the hat, showing up that shape more. Because that twisting, spiraling motion of the mesh makes it even more interesting than just straight. Just keep moving down your hat. Keep that form going. And as you can see, you can get coverage pretty quickly this way. Be sure as you step down to catch each one of your ties so that you get equal coverage all down the sides if it's viewed from the side. Of course, with that top bend that we did, you can do as much or as little of a bend as you need. Even if you start and it seems like it needs more, once you get all of the mesh on, you can still bend it a bit more. And as we move down the piece, you can see that I've got it a little bit looser so that it puffs more. You got a bit more swirl going on. Okay, now we're starting across these bottom ties to finish filling out the shape of our piece. And we're at the end of the first roll. So we're just going to pull that over. Tie it down. Going to tuck that loose end underneath the previous band and continue on with our next roll. Even if you run out in the middle of a project, you can always just leave that end, start with the next piece directly on top of it, and just continue on. You don't have to say, oh, I don't have enough length there, and end up wasting a cut end or something like that, and because it really doesn't hurt it at all. Let's see. Here we go, that looks pretty good on that corner. And we can trim this off. And we'll tuck that end underneath. Now then, at this point, all of these side pieces we're finished with. We can tuck all of those underneath and hide them. Just push those right in there. Okay, now then, we can kind of judge and look and see if we want a bit more curve in. If we do, we can just bend that a bit more. There we go. Now your next part is to flip it upside down and make sure your ties across the bottom are out where you can get to those, because we're going to attach our half wreath to it. That one's a bit short right there, so I'll show you how to fix that. Okay, we'll leave that in tucked under. Now then, you take the half wreath portion, turn this so you can see, and we're going to fit it in right here. Now, we're going to take one of those ties at the bottom of the curve first and twist that tightly, and then we'll push it back through so we've got access to it to tie more mesh onto later. And then we'll work our way out on each side, which will fashion the brim of the hat. Do the same thing on this side. And up here as well. Okay, now then, where you've cut your wreath, you can see there are still some sharp edges. Just take a pair of pliers with their needle nose irregular and bend those tips under so that those sharp edges are turned in and you won't have anything sharp scratching your wall, your hand, your door, whatever you might use it on. And now if you've cut and you've still got more, like I do here, more length that should be tied down, you could take a chenille stem or a zip tie, either one, and just pull those ends tightly and tie. For some projects like that, I like to use the chenille stems because the fiber on the wire itself helps to grip. It's also easy in the hands. Okay. Now then, you're ready to start with the bottom portion. Turn it this way. Now to form this, We're going to use the same process that you would use to do the leaves for the tops of your pumpkins. So we're just going to cut the strips like this and just pleat in the middle, pinch that together so that you've got some tails going out here. And you're going to tie along the base with your ties. And you can just continue with that across. Quickly cut a few here. So you can see the effect. So you continue all the way across with your bottom tier. And then you're going to come up and do the same with that second layer. Pull that in tight. Now I still see this green here, so I'm going to tuck that under. Okay, and we've just got a few more. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more cuts to do. And then we'll be ready to add our burlap, which will just add one more texture to it. Depending on the mesh that you use, looks like today this one's only going to take 2 rolls of the black. Just depends on how many layers that you have to do across your piece in order to get the fullness and the opacity that you want for that piece. It may take as much as 3 rolls. You may want your brim a lot thicker, fuller, but the black is doing pretty well. Of course, you could do this in different colors. You could do it in lime with purples. You can do it in the chocolate brown as I've got going there. You could do it in orange, again with purple, or greens, just any combination that you might think you want to do that'll go along with your Halloween theme. Now the reason that I'm doing the cuts like this along the brim in terms of a different technique for the cone of the hat itself is just to give a differing texture. So it helps the brim stand out as a different portion and function for the hat. It just makes it a bit more interesting. Okay, I'm tying the last one in over here, I think I got them all. Alright, now that's got all of the mesh, so now you can see how it looks at that point. Of course, once you get this done, just to help shape your mesh, you're going to want to sit it maybe against a wall or lean it against something, to train the mesh to stick out and form more of the brim, because with it pushing against each other, it's going to want to hang down at first. So now we're ready for that next step, which will be to add some of the burlap. And to go along with the black, and we've got those few copper tips sticking out from the half wreath that I've done, we're going to use this orange burlap. Now I'm cutting it with angled ends, and that way I'm going to get those points sticking out. And also, you can either take your fingers and do it immediately and fray those ends a little bit, or you can just wait, and over the years it'll fray out a bit at a time. And that's perfectly all right. It just gives you a little bit more texture, a little more interest, and makes it not look like such a brand new witch's hat. After all, we don't like to think of them as being perfectly dressed. So all you've got to do to fray some is just to pull on those edges like that, stretch it out, and you get just a little bit of texture going. Now, I'm going to pinch the center, and again, do just like I did on the other. I'm going to attach that in at each tie, and let those points come toward the bottom. It's going to take several cuts there. But that starts to also give more definition as to what is the brim part of your hat. And as we go, you just see that, it just becomes a lot more fun. It gives you a lot more texture here all of a sudden just by adding that other color. And really moves pretty rapidly for such a large piece. Of course, there are all kinds of fun things you can add. You can do glittered items, you can do fall items, you can do natural mosses, just anything that's going to give your witch hat personality and let people imagine what your witch is like. Okay, this is the last one here. Make sure all of my, whoops, looks like I didn't get that one twisted. Okay, looks like all my points are aiming out like I want. And so now there you have all of your fabric work complete on the piece. Now you could stop there if you wanted, but we're not going to. So first thing I'm going to do is I want to just give the top of my hat a bit more whimsy, and for that I've chosen this grass bush. And this particular one's got seed heads. You can use glittered ball sprays, similar to what we have on the tree behind me. You can use any and all kinds of things. Now, to put that in, because of the tight cone shape here, this works just really, really well, that you can just stick that stem, that entire bush, down in through that loop of the tie. and let that stay nice and tight. And then shape it a bit toward you. And there you've got the first step done. And that just uses an entire bush, no cuts. Okay, and then in front of that, we can use this leaf and berry spray. It's smaller. And that can just add a bit more texture as well and help finish off the base. So again, I'm going to just stick that down in here a bit, and I'll use the edge of one of my ties to twist and tie that piece in. Okay, and then I can move one of the leaves around to hide that. And then I have these rattan balls, which are glittered with sort of a graphite color. And so just for a little more weight, a little more finish, I'm going to glue that right in here. So I'm just going to dip it in my glue pan. You can also use your glue gun if that's what you have. And I'm going to glue it right in there and hold that a second for it to dry. Okay, now then, across the bottom, I'm going to lay this down so that both of us can see what we're doing. I'm going to use more of these picks. You can either use the whole pick or you can cut it apart. I had a fairly large pick which I used on the hat here. There's a full pick at the top, but then I was able to cut it apart and just use the individual leaves. Okay, I'm going to keep applying across, and it looks like it's going to take 4 of these to go around the brim. Depending on the size of what you choose, makes a difference as to how many it's going to take for you. You can play with this first before you glue it in, just to make sure that you've got the blend that you like. Better safe than sorry. So depending on what you want, you can do the full pick. Let me bend this in so you can see. It's just going to be fairly heavy, but I think with my darker color here I can manage to do that. So I'm just going to fold this stem in half in this case. And I'm going to apply a little glue to the base, and I'm just going to insert that through and let that glue take hold of the mesh. And this gives you instant pop in a hurry. You've got the texture of the berry, the additional frill of the leaf cuts, as well as all that color variation popping out. I'm just going to bring that across there and fill in, which forms sort of a band around that brim. All ready to go. Again, as I said, you can do it in various colors, mix and match. You can find all of these items at Trees and Trends, and enjoy shopping, enjoy playing, and enjoy your witch's hat project. Thanks.